Introducing Fintropolis.
Here we go. Hey, catch me if you can. Catch me if you can. Come on. Hey, catch me if you can. Catch me if you can. I'm going so fast, and you are never gonna slow me down. I'm in my own class, and I'm coming to steal your crown. Yeah, I'm coming to take your crown. Yeah, I'm coming to take your crown. Yeah, I'm coming to take your crown. Here we go. Hey, catch me if you can. Catch me if you can. Come on.
First and foremost, got to thank Ally.
Catch me if you can. Catch me if you can. Here we go. Hey, catch me if you can. Catch me if you can. Come on. Hey, catch me if you can. Catch me if you can. Come on.
Welcome to Alpha Live, an opportunity for the Alpha Media to get together, to share some stories, to learn some new things, and to expand our network. And today we have long-time Alpha partner, Ally. For those that don't know Ally, you saw the video. Let me tell you a little bit more about them. Ally is banking smarter and simpler while serving their communities. It is the nation's largest digital-only bank. There are 0 branches. It offers a full range of financial services, including auto lending, mortgages, and investments. Now, fun fact, Ally is focused on making banking simpler, straightforward, and more accessible for all. Accessibility is key, and it was the first bank to eliminate overdraft fees. They value and encourage the mantra of working better together. They are focused on environmental, social, and governance issues that differentiate them from their peers, providing a positive social impact and helping stakeholders understand what's important to them. Their purpose-driven, do-it-right culture and desire to be relentlessly ally to the customer and communities they serve drive its commitments to create change through financial and social inclusion. Our Ally has an inclusive, award-winning culture that embraces diversity. And earlier this year, they signed a 3-year commitment with Alpha. They've been a long-time sponsor with us and are continuing to engage and reach the Latino community. And their commitment to their customers has been at the core of who they are for over 100 years. And this includes connecting with their communities like Alpha. This year, if you were at the 50th anniversary convention, you saw Ally all over and playing a key role from start to finish. They were our lead sponsor for the always exciting White Party, issued $25,000 in scholarships, and are involved locally. Where I talk about where the heart of things happen in Charlotte, Dallas, Detroit, Ally is one of Alpha's key legacy partners. Their partnership with Alpha has remained strong throughout the years and gone above and beyond monetary investments. It has been a true partnership. Ally is committed to our community and to the mission of Alpha. Ally engages and partners with Alpha both on the local and national level. They are consistently finding innovative ways to give back and make change, and together we empower the future. And today I have the privilege of welcoming 3 amazing individuals from Ally. First, Ally's Chief Diversity Officer, Reggie Willis. We also have Multicultural Marketing Director, Erica Hughes, and Hispanic Marketing Lead, Jennifer Villamil. We are going to go deep dive into Ally's unique approach to reaching the Latino market and some of their innovative marketing initiatives, including the Charlotte Football Club sponsorship and milestone initiative. This work to support a new generation of diverse content creators in the comic world. Also, we're going to talk about how we partner together to move the needle, to make true impact, lasting impact, make change happen. So let us learn a little bit more about the team that's here. Reggie, I'm going to say a little bit about you. So Reggie is the Chief Diversity Officer at Ally Financial and has responsibility for all diversity and inclusion activities at the company, including enhancing and implementing diverse and inclusive framework, partnering with stakeholders across the organization and in the community. We also have Erica Hughes. And currently, Erica serves as the Director of Multicultural Marketing at Ally. And if you're not sure exactly what multicultural marketing is, this is the place to understand how that matters and how it's different from DEI and what it means to our community moving forward. And as the first ever multicultural marketing hire at Ally, Erica is responsible for creating and leading the vision and strategy for multicultural marketing. In addition, Ms. Hughes leads the organization's efforts to increase awareness and consideration amongst diverse consumer segments. And finally, Jennifer currently serves as the Multicultural Marketing Manager at Ally and leads their Hispanic marketing initiatives, contributing to the organization's efforts to increase brand awareness and consideration with Hispanic Latino consumers while building trust with this growing segment. Thank you so much for being here with us. Thank you for this opportunity to get to know more about how you are positively impacting the community. And so, Erica, if you don't mind, first I want to start with you. So, can you tell us a little bit about, what are a few must-haves when you start talking about building a multicultural marketing strategy?
Yeah, thank you, Damien. We are so excited to be with you all this evening. I'm so happy to talk about our journey here at Ally and all the things that we do to support multicultural audiences. So, having a multicultural strategy is something that should be well thought out of and really founded and grounded in insights, research, and data. I think when I first got here a couple years ago, that was one of the most important things to me is like, how do I take what the consumers are giving me? How do I take the insights that I'm seeing in the marketplace? One of the best things about social and digital is that the data is there. The insights are there. The research is there. You just have to have the team in place to be able to interpret the data and understand what are consumers asking for, what are they demanding, what are trends in the marketplace, and then how can you build programs to help reach the consumers and where they are. The second thing I think is really important is you have to have subject matter experts. You have to have a team of people who understand community and culture inside and out. And that was really important to me in building my team, is making sure that we reflected the communities that we're serving, right? So we have somebody on my team who went to a HBCU. We have people who went to PWIs. We have people who are Hispanic, someone who's LGBTQ, etc. And I could go on. But the team that works on all of these audiences are really authentic in the community that we serve. So we're coupling the data that we look at in the insights with the subject matter experts who live and breathe and think about these nuances every single day. And I think that is really important because when things come across our desk or we see something, we can be able to bounce ideas off each other based on insights, but we also have that gut and we can gut check ourselves to say, this doesn't feel right. Someone in our culture would not say that in that way, or how can we tweak slight nuances to make sure they're super authentic to the communities that we're serving. I think the last thing that you really need in a multicultural strategy or marketing to cultural segments is you need support from your organization. You need budget. You need to have a seat at the table, which is so important to get the work done because when I joined Ally, it wasn't a matter of why this work needs to be done. It was how could we accelerate the growth? How could we do more in a shorter amount of time? And we have an organization that supports the mission and the goals, then it's so much easier to get things done. It's so much easier to have that support with budget and recognition versus having to explain why these segments are important or having to explain why you need to support these audiences. So those are a few must-haves that I think are super important when building a multicultural strategy, or even thinking about how is your organization ripe for having this type of work internally.
Great. So I appreciate that. So Reggie, I want to plug you in now. So when you start thinking of multicultural strategy as the CDO, how important is an organization's culture for the success of being able to execute upon that strategy?
Yeah, first, Damien, thank you for having us here. Super excited, more excited to be with Erica and Jennifer, two of my favorite partners. But when you talk about the importance of having a solid culture related to a multicultural strategy. I think foundationally, at least here at Ally, we see our culture as kind of the glue that holds all the things we do together. So from servicing our customers to thinking about new products to how we engage each other as employees. So when you talk about culture, our CEO Jeff Brown says, if we have the right culture, our people will take care of everything else. So when we think about culture and what it means to not just a multicultural marketing strategy, but what it means to us as an organization, for me, it is the most authentic part of who we are as an organization. When I started at Ally 10 years ago, we were developing this kind of one Ally, this do it right mantra that we go by, and really what it means to be, an ally to our customers, an ally to our employees, and really making sure that we're thoughtful about how we execute on that promise that we made years ago to make sure that we're doing all that we can for our employees and for our customers, more importantly. So to me, when you talk about the foundation of what we do, it's about creating a culture where people feel like they have an opportunity to have a sense of belonging, where people feel like their voices count. And what that does for Erica and her team, it makes it very easy to go to market with a more authentic strategy because they believe what they're saying, right? The things that we talk about internally are just amplified to them externally. And I couldn't be happier when we announced that that Erica was going to be on the team, and Jennifer and all the people that she's added to her team, because to me, we've always had a great story about our culture. We've always had a great story about who we are as an organization. And now Erica and her team have breathed life into that externally. So when you think about how do we show that? How do we show up in those unique segments that we look at? You mentioned how we showed up at the ALPFA convention earlier this month. And for me, that was such a proud moment because we didn't just show up like we would show up for any other event. We were very thoughtful about the audience that we were going to be a part of. You bring up La Familia all the time. And for me, I felt like I am not from my background is not Hispanic or Latino, but I felt at home and so comfortable in that environment, and that we showed up in a way that met everyone where they were and gave people an opportunity to feel connected to who we were as a brand. And that speaks volumes to the work we're doing from a multicultural perspective.
Yeah, so I love that. I'm gonna keep going with that line, right? The whole thing of meeting people where they're at. The Latino community, we are not a monolith, right? It's
Right.
very diverse, right? So Jennifer, I want to pull you into the conversation here, right? Targeting, sort of engaging with the Hispanic community, the Latino community is not a one size fits all approach, and that's not how Ally approaches it. Now, how do you navigate cultural nuances and differences when you develop a campaign?
Yeah, I love that question because I think it starts with that. It's you understanding who your audience is. Reggie just mentioned we were going to the Alpha convention, so we knew, okay, this is a primarily Hispanic audience. How do we bring in some of those cultural nuances? How do we be thoughtful with the things that we're including in the way we're showing up? It starts by just that clear understanding, which pulls in what Erica was mentioning, where you have the right people sitting at the table before you're making those decisions to show up in a certain way. So in the planning and in those rooms where the ideas are starting, you include those right people, those individuals who are experts in the culture, and you navigate them by understanding that you're there to serve a purpose. What is that purpose? That has to be identified by the organization, and then you execute on those things. So we're saying, as a digital bank, we want to be a resource to the Hispanic community. So how do we bring that and carry that into every single thing that we do? So there's that consistency and that clear representation of this is how we want to serve you, and we're listening to what those needs are. So as you listen to the needs of a New Yorker that's Puerto Rican, or, the Mexican community in California, and it's very different from what you'll find in Texas or, in the Cuban population in Miami, where I'm from. So, you find a lot of those nuances across the United States. And then you can think, so with our strategy here, who are we speaking to? How do we make sure that we're consistent in the way that we're showing up? But more than anything, again, it starts with having the right people in the room and listening. listening. I think that's really important because the Hispanic community is engaged, they're passionate, they're opinionated, and we will always be ready to share. It's just a matter of us being thoughtful as a brand, to listen closely to what those needs are and executing on those needs.
Yeah, and I love that, right? I mean, so I'll say, one of the things that from an alpha perspective, we have the lead pillars, and the lead pillars are, business mastery, professional EQ, health and wellness, community engagement, entrepreneurship. The one that I skipped over that I want to talk more about is the wealth creation piece. And oftentimes, I will say, growing up, that wasn't necessarily a conversation that was being had at the dinner table. And for myself, one of the most impactful points in my career was having somebody at work say, "Are you ready for your promotion?" I said, "Of course I am." They said, "Are you sure you're ready?" And I said, "If you're asking me twice, it means I probably don't know what I don't even know about not being ready." And he said, "That's right. Let me share with you the financial piece of what you're about to start going through." And that really started to open my eyes about conversations about financials and talking about what does it mean to build wealth, and not just for my family, but for generations on down. And so as we start thinking about, you talked a little bit about developing campaigns. What's Ally's approach to reaching the U.S. Hispanic Latino community, where sometimes it might be a little bit of a, wait a second, I don't want to talk about that, right? So how do you engage?
Yeah, I mean, I think so for us, Erica mentioned this briefly, and it starts with the insights. So when I said that we listen, it's because we've also done our homework and dug into some of that research, and we're hearing that the Hispanic, community, they're not feeling connected to these digital banks because they have that fear and that distrust already from banks in general. So we start with that insight and we say, how can we start breaking down some of those fears, those barriers? And then we led to the conclusion of, well, let's just resource them. You know what I mean? Because I think a lot of that fear, to your point, is just not knowing what you don't know, and so how do we lay that out in a clear way? How do we break down those barriers by saying, this is the way we want to serve you? What is it that you need? Do you need advice on buying your first home? Are you hesitant about investing because you don't know much about investing? Or do you want to learn more about just managing your accounts and saving money for a vacation or something, another milestone moment in your life? I think it's identifying those things and saying, we want to step in as a brand, and we want to be able to resource you and empower you in that moment so that you have all the information that you need so you can just go and live your best life, essentially. I mean, that's really, from a digital bank perspective, I think that's what ultimately we want, to be that resource. And so the way that we do that is, again, by listening and by showing up in those moments that they need. And Reggie mentioned it earlier. I love that phrase of meeting people where they are. I think a lot of the times when you have these scary terms, these scary financial terms, people throw them around and they're afraid to ask the questions. And so we're taking a step back. So we've created programs and have resources on our site that just, again, help break those down for you. So you can just get a better understanding and wrap your head around your finances.
I will add one thing there. Yeah. One of the great things that Jennifer has been working on this summer, aligned with resourcing them, is content series and making sure that we're getting content out there that has the education around generational wealth, around finances, to help Ally build trust with our consumers. And so we have this awesome content series called All Things Finance with Adrienne Bylon Houghton, who is a proud Latina. She is former co-host of The Real. I know her from the Cheetah Girls from growing up. And so we all know her from some point in our life. And now she's transitioning to be this entrepreneur, and she's transitioned to be a mom. And there are so many financial conversations that come along with that. And so we created this 6-part series where she's going along with her family, other Latinas in the space, and she's talking about things that we didn't talk about growing up, and she's breaking them down and having conversations with influential people in her life about all the things that she learned along her journey, her money journey, all the topics around generational wealth that did not happen at her household, that did not happen at her dinner table, in hopes that we can inspire these conversations to happen across the board with a content series with a talent like Adrienne, that she can help us connect with Latinas and everybody in the Hispanic community. So those are just some of like the tangible manifestations. And you can find that on her YouTube page, Authoring's Adrian. And it's a wonderful series. And I encourage everyone to go out and watch it, because I think I learned things just by leading through this. And I work in financial services, but it's just how do you make sure that you're continually having those conversations?
Yeah.
We actually have a clip that we would love to share from one of the episodes. She was joined with another celebrity, Francia Raiza, and it's just a great conversation. So I'd love to share that if we have time.
Yeah, absolutely.
Perfect.
What's up, you guys? Okay, I am super excited for today because I am here with my girl, Francia. Okay, I always love seeing you. You always look stunning.
You too.
And I felt like you were the perfect person to have this conversation with about growing up Latina in Hollywood and how we handled our finances getting in the business so early.
Girl.
This is gonna get very interesting.
Very.
So let's dive right in.
I grew up translating for my parents.
Yes.
And I didn't know what the hell I was translating. And I know there's still
Things would come in the mail and I'd be like, te están diciendo que you
Esto.
owe this. Yeah, like.
And then they ask you, ¿qué quiere decir eso? Yo no sé, yo nomás estoy diciendo lo que estoy leyendo.
Yeah.
So this is another reason why I'm glad we're having this conversation for first generationers that are translating. And even if this sounds like crazy talk, at least you have an idea. Okay, what's a 401k? Let me look that up. Who do I know that works in finance? And believe me or not, people are willing to help.
Well, that's awesome. I would say, like, what I'm loving about this conversation, it's all about access to information. Access to information. You all have used the word multiple times here, and I don't want to lose it through the conversation. Trust. Access to information that you can trust to then make decisions about how you want to move forward in your life. Right? I'll give you an example. I remember having a conversation with my dad about my wife and I had saved up some money. We were like, we think we want to buy an investment property. And the response was, you don't want to deal with tenants? Okay, apparently I don't want to deal with tenants, and did not buy any investment properties. This was in, 2001, 2002. I've looked back at what some of those properties were then and how much they're worth now, and think about the wealth because of just not having information on it, right? And so what I love about this is it's just access to information, and then making decisions, having those conversations is so critical and needed. And so I just want to make sure for those, how do they get access to those videos again? Just through the YouTube channel over there?
Yes, they are on her Adrian's YouTube channel, All Things Adrian, it's entitled, and it's also on Facebook, but you can find the full episodes there. There's 6 of them, and so there's plenty of content there to watch. But I loved the cultural nuances that you see weaved in throughout the episodes. It's intentional because we want to make sure that, again, we're connecting, and that's part of building trust. When Latinos feel that they can connect to something, they can connect to a brand, they're loyal to those connections, and therefore the trust will come. But I think it's, again, just built over time. And so that's why we're putting out the best content over time and trying to do our best to continue to build that trust with the community.
Awesome.
Damien, you mentioned something I'd love to touch on, and it's a difficult one because it happens in the Black community too. You mentioned kind of getting information from your parents or someone that's older than you. And many times it's really hard to go against the advice that they give you, but the advice they're giving you is from the position that they've lived in or that their parents lived in. And we're not in that environment anymore. Most of us are more successful than our parents were. Most of us are in a different financial situation. Mm-hmm. So it's not a matter of us having to, make sure that we've got enough money for a rainy day, or that we have to make sure that we're taking care of generations of our family, or whatever the scenario might be. Some of that might be the case for some of us, but the reality is we've got the finances. We do have the income where we have the opportunity to do some other things with it. So how do you, one, get that trusted information that you mentioned and that Jennifer mentioned and that Erica mentioned, but two, how do you then say, yep, I heard you, Dad, but I'm going to go do something different? Because of the cultural pieces, it's very hard for us to go against our family, in particular our parents. And that's a tough one. But I think that the more trust you have in whomever you're speaking with, the ability you get more courage in being able to go against what your parents are telling.
Yeah, it's right. I mean, it resonates with me a lot. because the advice is out of love, right?
Right.
Like it is pure love and not wanting you to do something bad. And so it's my wife and I talk about it a lot with our kids. The lessons that we had to learn growing up are very different than the lessons that we have to teach to our kids.
Right.
And some of those things we're learning kind of late in the game for ourselves. And so it's we're trying to make sure we're getting enough information to be able to pass it along at the right time for our kids, while we're also trying to build up our knowledge. So it is complex, but at the same time, when, just having the conversations and knowing that it's okay to have the discussion. And I'll say this one more, being able to talk with folks that have gone through it already with their parents, it makes it easier to know even how to have the conversation, right? So it's I love what you're talking about with it, because it is so important to how we keep having the discussions, keep them going. And so I want to jump a little bit to, right, we've talked about multicultural marketing. A lot of people think about DEI. So we got those two pieces. Erica, Reggie, can you help a little bit more on how do you kind of narrow down to the difference between DEI efforts and multicultural marketing, and how does Ally outline the relationship between the two?
I'm happy to start, but Erica, please, I definitely want to have you chime in. So Damien, I think we are hand in glove. I mean, the work that we do is so intertwined. I think many times DEI programs are very internally focused. And I think when you think about a multicultural marketing strategy, that is the external amplification of that internal focus. And really for us, over the past year and a half or 2 years, we've been very deliberate about how do we take this idea of being an ally inside and out, right? So not just being an ally to our employee base or our customers, but how do we then really take that and go into the market segment in a very authentic way? So for us, Erica and I have conversations. Erica's team and my team have conversations weekly, if not daily. So we are constantly on conversations together, and that's really, and it's not forced. It's a very natural conversation. It's a very thoughtful conversation. And much like Erica's team, we have representation on my team that is able to speak from a very authentic position and a lived experience, which I think is so critical to informing how you do this work. I can't tell you how many times when I first started this work, I walked into rooms where I was the only, and people were trying to navigate being inclusive, trying to navigate how do you create that sense of belonging? How do you allow people to understand how their opinions count? And they just didn't understand how to we talked about meeting people where they are. They didn't have that lived experience, so they didn't know how to do it. And I think when you talk about multicultural marketing and DEI, it is so important for the DE&I strategy to be in lockstep with the multicultural strategy, because when we go to the market, we're saying the same thing. When we're talking to our employees, it's not disconnected. So when our employees speak about who we are, there's this authenticity that you don't get if multicultural marketing was running down a path that was solely for getting eyes on a screen or getting views or getting clicks, versus really being that amplification of who we were authentically. It would be a disconnect. So when we show up, people don't just see our ads. When they see our employees, they go, oh, I get it. Because their employees are exactly how they show up in these ads. We're quirky, we're different, we're unique, but we are so honestly who we are that you can't help but be, and this is me, of course I'm biased, I've been here 10 years, but you can't help but be drawn into what we're talking about and who we are. And I think that's why, quite frankly, the relationship we have with ALPFA works so well, because from the day you and I shook hands and met one another, there was a connection. And it was a real connection because of the things that we both had experienced from our careers. And that's what we try to bring into the experience of our customers. So, Erica, I know you probably have much more technical speak to amplify that, but that's, how I think about it.
Yeah, no, I think you're spot on. And just saying that, the marketing essentially is the external manifestation of those organizational pillars. And so it's so important for organizations to think about the ethos of who your brand is in who you are, because you cannot manifest something externally that doesn't live inside your brand. Our do it right culture, it transcends everything we do. And so on the marketing side, our team is creating programs and content and activations and building relationships with media companies, all around how do we externally manifest what is already happening internally. So we create those relationship with partners to do things like the Odd Things Adrian sent series, or to work with minority-owned vendors, which is a huge pillar for my team and my organization, to make sure that we're connecting authentically with the consumers that we're serving. How do we make sure we're speaking in a tone that makes people want to have a conversation with us and want to show up for our brand? Because the way that we see it, Jennifer and I and our team, is like, when you have a brand that values you and that values your perspective, you want to engage with that brand. And all marketing is engagement between a consumer and a brand that brings value, right, to the consumer's lives. And we feel like that our multicultural team is just an external manifestation of what we're getting internally and how we tell that story outside, so people want to connect with us. I think sometimes we forget that, consumers are humans. They want to feel your brand. They want to know who you are, and they would want to be able to see and touch and do things to make them feel authentic. And we do that internally, but we also do that externally with our multicultural team.
I appreciate that. It's fantastic. And I'll say that since I've engaged with, I'll give an example of a small thing that's a big thing, right? When COVID hit and students were losing internships left, right, and center, you all still had your internship programs going on. You had things happening. But when we reached out and said, hey, we have this fellowship thing we want to create, you didn't just say, okay, we'll do, you jumped into that and did something exponentially more and created something bigger for those students. You had C-suite individuals having meetings with them. Mm-hmm. You didn't need to do that, but you did it. All we literally asked for was 1 hour of executive time per week of someone to talk to them. And you all gave literally your C-suite was in there. And to your point, I think when you do the right thing inside of an organization and you have the right people inside of an organization, how you show up in marketing, people can tell when you're not being real, right? People can tell that. And there is such a sync between everyone that I've ever met that works at Ally and what I see that you all do. So I appreciate that wholly. Let me ask this question. There's a question that actually came in. One of the questions out there is folks are asking, what's the biggest mistakes that brands can make in trying to reach the Latino market? What should they not do?
I would love to answer that one because it's one that I'm so passionate about. Erica knows it's I'm always ready to jump on my soapbox with this. And it's Hispanic Heritage Month is coming up. It's right around the corner. It's great if you're doing something for Hispanic Heritage Month, but please don't let it end there. I feel like brands too often make this mistake, and we've seen it also with Black History Month, and I feel that it needs to be cohesive and it needs to be consistent, which is what we were saying earlier. Imagine if like a dating relationship is like what I tried. If somebody were to meet you and you were just to pop up and meet the person, and then the next day they want to marry you, that's a red flag, number one. And number two, you didn't give yourself enough chance to get to know the person. And so that's the same way with a brand. A brand pops up during Hispanic Heritage Month and they have these beautiful campaigns and the ads are everywhere. And then the month is over and there goes all the intentionality behind reaching the Hispanic consumer. When we know, like you opened up the conversation, Damien, the Hispanic community is engaged. We're passionate. We're ready. And we're adding value in every single segment. So I think this is the perfect opportunity to, yes, pop up during Hispanic Heritage Month if you really want to do something, but then also show up November, December, January, February, throughout the year. Make sure that the strategy that you're building considers all of those moments throughout the year, because we know that there's plenty opportunity to do that. So I would say that let's build a strategy that is inclusive, and that is what we like to call here at Ally, always on. We're always on. We're always listening. We're always finding unique ways to continue to resource the Hispanic community, because we know that you're listening year round. You don't just listen September 15th to October 15th. So that would be my 2 cents.
The one thing that I would add to that too is not listening to insights, data, and trends that the consumers are asking for, right? So, I said before, with the rise of social and digital, there is so much information to be had in the marketplace on what consumers are expecting, what they are asking for, what they need from you as a brand. And one of the things that we like to do is build campaigns based on insights. What does the data say? What are consumers asking for us? What are their pain points? Where are their issues? And how do you think about reaching consumers where they are, but giving them what they're asking you for on data and insights? And I think sometimes we're in a race to get things done, or you might not have the resources, but how do you think about using research to help you guide the conversations with Latinas, Hispanic community, Black community, LGBTQ, but everybody that you're serving should be grounded in data and insights.
Yeah, and Damien, just to add one more thing, you said it earlier. The Hispanic community is not a monolith, right? So you can't just, throw, I think back to Juneteenth and how many organizations celebrated Juneteenth by just kind of throwing a sticker on a Vaseline container that said Juneteenth, and all of a sudden they were celebrating, right? Or, you can't, or doing something in language and thinking that just because you did it in language, it's automatically going to resonate with the full Hispanic community. And you have to do all the things that Erica and Jennifer said around making sure you are not only listening, but acting on what you're hearing and taking the data and not sitting in a room with a group of people, even though they might be diverse, you're still not necessarily getting a representative understanding of what the full community might need. And you hear that so loud and clear from Erica's point through all of the different ways to get data. So what are you doing with it, right? As an organization, how are you taking that data and being much more thoughtful with it?
And I want to say too, Reggie, really quick. I love that you said that about data and access to data. We keep mentioning that. I think it's important to note too that a lot of the times, brands may feel strapped because they're like, oh, I just don't have the budget to do something year round, or I think there's a great way to take some of that data that's many cases free. There's a lot of free resources out there. There's a lot of these professional organizations, they put out marketing guides and resources that you can access for free. Take that, digest it with your team, and handpick those moments that you can be consistent and then you can show up. Because I think sometimes it's overwhelming for a brand to say, well, we don't have the marketing dollars that X company has, but we could probably do something, probably 5 meaningful things. Is that okay? Yes, that's okay. Because I think that the community will appreciate the fact that you're trying and that you're showing up. And that if you listen to those insights and you pull that in with those resources, then you're able to deliver on something that's meaningful, that's impactful, but something that's resourcing them. That's what really the key thing is here, is finding those ways to connect and resource. When someone feels resourced, then when they feel that they're truly getting something for you, again, that trust is there. And that relationship just strengthens even more. And they know, gosh, this is a brand that cares about me, about the things that I care about, which is why, here at Ally, we say that we want to be your ally. We want to be in your corner. We care about the things that you care about, whether it's something as small as saving up for the next pair of shoes you want, or, retiring, whatever it is. We want to step in and help you reach those goals.
That's I love that. Let me ask this. So we got a couple of questions coming in. We have a couple more questions that we wanted to go through. One question that I have that I think people might be wondering, let's say if you're a student, marketing major, or a professional that's in marketing, but how do you get into multicultural marketing? Or is it that multicultural marketing should really become just what marketing is, right? Curious your thought. I guess I asked you 2 questions in there, right? So one is, how does someone upskill themselves or cross-skill in such a way that they can jump into this space if that's what they're focused on?
So I'll start with the second question first and then go to the first question second. So should marketing, should this just be the way that we're marketing? I think that is my hope, certainly, is that as you look at the face of consumer growth in the world and the way that especially the US is trending in terms of Hispanic growth, in terms of Black African American growth, and even looking at younger populations of Gen Z where they're already majority minority, right? So our kids are already growing up in a world that is already multicultural. My hope is that our organization and our industry will move to the space where we don't necessarily need a multicultural team, but it's just ingrained in everything we do. And I also think that all of these segments are growth segments for every organization in the planet, right? So when youth culture is driven by Hispanic culture and is driven by Black culture, and that is a fact, right? And so how do you make sure that as you're looking at where your growth is coming from in an organization, that you're not ignoring these audiences, because you're missing out on the growth for future generation and capturing customers who are going to lead the change in your consumer base for the next 5, 10, 15 years. And so that's certainly my hope, is that at some point we kind of make that shift as an industry, that marketing make that shift as an industry where we're talking to these audiences as just part of our strategy, as part of the diverse majority, because truly that's where the country is moving towards. So then when you ask the question about, how you get into these roles, I would say multicultural found me. I didn't find multicultural, right? And so if you ask anybody about who I am as a person, I am a lover of all things culture. I support minority-owned business. I have so much DNA about being someone who's supportive of community, supportive of culture. I grew up in Flint, Michigan, and I've lived in Detroit and Chicago. And you don't live and now I live in Atlanta. So you don't live in places like that where you have that innate sense of community and culture and passion and grit. And it was who I was as a human. And then I had experience, and I've been in marketing for 10 years, working on the general market side of advertising. So in media strategy, digital marketing, digital media. And so my role today is such a good blend of everything I learned working across marketing strategy, across general market, across building programs from the ground up, in a mix of who I am as a human being and as a person. And when you couple that together, you get the passion, you get the energy, because I will tell you, this is hard work. Right. So when you are in an organization and when you are trying to do something new, when you're pushing the industry, when you're pushing the envelope, it is hard work. It is hard work. And if you're not passionate about it, if it doesn't ooze out of your veins, you'll throw in the towel at the first sight of adversity. And so I think that's why it's so important for it to be a part of who you are, not just what you do.
So you could tell you love what you do, but like when you started to, you could, the smile, just the energy in your, let me answer this. I love that. It actually literally gave me chills how you were answering it in the story architect. So thank you for that. It was special, so I appreciate it.
That's me. It's who I am.
Like, yes.
To add, Damien, I just want to add to what Erica said about kind of it finding her. I think that is the case for many of us. I think DE and I found me, but the point that she made after was probably more important. It found her because she prepared for it, whether that was her lived experience or whether that was the things that she did in her career. And I think many times passion will get you through many days, without a doubt. And passion will wake you up in the morning. Passion is not going to make you an expert at this work. You've got to put in the work. And you can't just look at it through your own lived experience. So if Erica only approached multicultural marketing as a Black female, there'd be so many blind spots in what she does. So not only did she understand that, all right, I'm going to have to get educated in all of these other things that I don't have a lived experience in. Not only am I going to have to do that, but I'm also going to have to hire people that have those lived experiences and make sure that I am thinking about those intersections in how we develop teams and how we actually think about this work. Because too many times I get people literally on a daily basis saying, I have so much passion around DE&I. That's great. And I appreciate the passion. That doesn't mean you're qualified to work in this space. And you have to put in the work. And then once you put in the work, you now have to say, okay, well, I need to view this work and think about DE&I and think about multicultural marketing as a lens and not a lane. And what I mean by that is it's not just this little thing. And like Erica said, yeah, at some point we're going to get to a place where marketing just has to think of it as being multicultural because of who the audience is. And so until we can get the rest of, the folks that aren't doing the work like we are daily to put on that lens, we have to start to make sure that we continuously tell them, no, it's not a lane. No, it's not a lane. No, it's not a lane. You have to think about it as this is how you have to see everything that you do. And that's when your passion becomes actionable, and then it becomes something that you can monetize in a career. So.
And I know Jennifer might want to jump in, but please do the work. Reggie, what you said about doing the work is
that's so real.
Oh my God. That is so important, because you see it, I see it, we see it every day where everyone has the passion, but it's like you have to do the work.
I was that honestly flashed me back, and I was gonna open up by saying, like, this is my unsolicited advice to any students that may be listening right now. But I think, like Erica was saying, you've been in this game long enough where you could see that yes, passion can only get you so far. And I would say, to Reggie's point about doing the work, it's also part of doing the work is asking the questions, staying curious about this work, because as we were mentioning earlier, this landscape is constantly changing. Yes, the world is becoming more diverse, but there's more platforms being offered now to reach these diverse audiences. The digital landscape is insanity. And so how do you stay curious? How do you stay on top of, just being smart about the industry that you want to get into? And then again, for the students, ask the questions and be intentional about seeking out those opportunities to be in the rooms with individuals who have already done the work that you could learn from. You know what I mean? There's no reason you have to make the same mistakes that a lot of us probably had to go through. Asking the right questions, again, being exposed and seeking out opportunities, even just like this. Listening to panels on your commute to work. These are all things that I think are so helpful for your professional growth and development. And it's a game changer because it just gets you smart about these things. And pair that with your passion, it's a perfect combo.
Love that. Love that. So we have about 10 minutes and there's a ton of questions coming in. And so I'm trying to figure out the ones to jump towards. Okay, one sort of a question around, I don't know if it's a tactic, a strategy. I'm curious your thoughts. So Jennifer, I'm going to throw this one over to you, but leave it open to anyone who wants to answer. So the question that came in is, we're seeing a few bilingual ads on English language content. What are your thoughts on that? Do you think we'll see more of that? Do you think it works? Is it a tactic? Is it a strategy? Like, what are your thoughts around that whole thing?
Yeah, I think especially for Latinos, language is a connector, right? It's back to our roots. It ties back to our heritage. It's the way when you see and you hear or read a word in Spanish, it takes you back. It takes you to memories. It takes you to your home country. It takes you to traditions that you've experienced as a family or as an individual. And so I think it's amazing that brands are incorporating language. I think it's going to depend it's going to go case by case by different brands. And really who you're speaking to. Again, it goes back to knowing who you're speaking to, who's your audience, what's the age there. We've leaned heavily on our research that says, that the Hispanic millennials and the Gen Zers, they feel more comfortable transacting online with their banking needs in English. So we stick to English, but we are not afraid to throw in that Spanish word here and there. We have our tagline, we're all better off with an ally. And we've been translating that, we're all better off with an aliado. And aliado is the same in Spanish and in Portuguese. So it's reaching our Latino community. But again, it's just that little hint, that sazon, that flavor that you add in where you're just like, gosh, these are my people. I understand it. This ad is speaking to me. But I'm also acknowledging the fact that I'm here in the US and English is my first language, maybe, or even if it's not your first language, it's the way you're doing business and the way you're hearing it, material in school. And so I think it makes sense. And so I would say that brands really have to evaluate who's your target audience and how are they receiving the information that you're sharing out, and then go by that.
Yeah, no, I love that. I'll tell you for myself. So English is my first language. I speak Spanish, more Spanglish than proper Spanish. Nuyorican, right? That's who I am.
That's what it is.
It's what it is, right? And so I'd say whenever if the TV is on and I'm doing some stuff, if something pops up and I hear a Spanish thing going and it's an English, it definitely catches my attention. It's like, wait a second, who is that that's talking to me? Because I want to make sure if it's a brand that I can support, I want to make sure I'm supporting because they are speaking to me and my people, right? And so I think there's definitely a lot of ways that you can, to your point, to engage a community. And you talk about aliados, and for those that don't know, Allies ERG is called Aliados. And actually, Reggie, I think I see a flag from the Aliados group behind you over there, right?
It absolutely is. I keep it. Yes.
Yes.
Love that. Right. So, I mean, it's I love the way it truly is a part of the culture of the organization that you are. So we have like about 9 minutes left. Two questions I want to ask, because I think it's important to hit these. And if there's a little bit more time afterwards, great. You've already talked about a lot of reasons why multicultural marketing matters to Ally, but I want to ask the question explicitly, right? Why does it matter to Ally? So Erica, Jennifer, do one of you want to go ahead and start us off?
Yeah, I go ahead and kick us off, and Jennifer and even Reggie can probably jump in and talk more about it too. So I think Ally is such a purpose-driven organization that multicultural and marketing to these segments are just so important because we are purpose-driven and we're essentially looking to do it right by communities, by our customers, and by everybody that we're serving. And so kind of the manifestation of my team was just a natural progression of the organization and where the organization had been moving on this trajectory to become more authentic to the communities that we're serving, to engage more with those communities and think about them on the forefront of the things that we're doing. And so it matters because it's just part of our mission to do it right. It's part of who we are, thinking about how do we be an ally inside and out? How do we make sure that no matter if it's our Latino community or our HBCU program that we have that helps bring new and diverse talent into the organization. And by the way, not just for an internship, but how do we keep these students into our organization, full-time hires? How do you make sure that you're retaining people? How do you make sure that the external manifestation of all of that comes through in your marketing? I think it's just part of the ethos of working for a purpose-driven brand.
I would say too, like Erica mentioned, that tagline, do it right. We want to do it right because we have taken the time to listen and hear. So something that we say internally is that we obsess over our customer. And so when our customers are saying, gosh, I'm fearful about banking, or I don't understand this whole investment thing. I'm scared. I want to hold on to my money. But in particular, Hispanic communities where we grew up and we come from countries that we're told not to trust the bank. We're stuffing money under our mattress and saying, no way, I'm saving this for a rainy day, when in reality, there's so much opportunity for you to do more. So when we're hearing those stories and when we're hearing and digesting that data, we're saying, how could we meet that need? How can we be a resource? How can we help? How can we be an ally so that you can branch out and manage your money better? So you can take the leap and make those investments because you're securing your financial future and you're building generational wealth. And so it's really us just doing the right thing and stepping in and finding ways to help. And so when we're able to do that, we're able to kind of lead the way and hopefully be pioneers and hopefully encourage other brands to do the same thing, because it's not just about pushing product and it's not about pushing services, but it's about doing the right thing and making sure that we're putting our money where our mouth is, quite literally. And again, just leading by example. It's more than just a tagline for us. Like Erica mentioned, it's ingrained into our DNA. It's just what we do.
Yeah, so I'll just add one piece to that, Damien, and I think the other part that I think Erica and Jennifer were both alluding to, but I'll say it expressly, is being intentional, right? You think about the two industries that are our bread and butter, banking and the auto industry. Historically, both of those industries, if you look at who runs them and who they were speaking to, it was white men, right? When you look at an older white man, right? So if we continue down that path without intention, we're going to continue to default to what is comfortable and what we're accustomed to. So by putting a multicultural marketing strategy in place, by putting a DE&I team in place, we are now saying that we're putting intention behind what we're doing. And you can tell by the outcomes that we're having that intention is yielding different results. And so for us, it really starts at the top of the house. JB, our CEO, and Andrea Brimmer, our Chief Marketing Officer, Kathy Patterson, our Chief Human Resource Officer. Very rarely do they tell us no in the work that we do. And that's a testament to the importance that they've placed on the work, not because Erica and Reggie are great people. We are, but it's more about the fact that the work that we are doing is changing lives and changing the way we show up in the communities we do business in. And that's about the intention that we place on this work. And I think that's what's important right now, because without that intention, without that deliberate focus, we're going to go back to, the system is going to go back to where it's comfortable.
Yeah, so I want to go on that a little bit more. And there's so many questions. We talked about community, hearing, understanding. One of the questions that's out there is, right, a lot of talk about data. Are you ever surprised and have to shift direction based on, we think this, now we're seeing actually we got to go a different direction because you are listening to the community?
I'll jump in very quickly, Eric. I know you've got a lot to say on this one, but my first thing is I try to go to the data before I make an assumption. And then you don't, because many times when you have an assumption, you go and find the data that supports
it. Proves it,
right? That proves that assumption, right? So if you're a conservative, you're going to go to Fox News. If you're a liberal, you're going to go to CNN or MSNBC, right? And so you're going to go find something that tells you what you already believe to be fact. So many times we're human, so that doesn't always work, but I try to go to the data first before I make an assumption. And Eric, I don't know if you think differently.
Yeah, I was gonna 100% say that. So our team has specific goals that we are tasked with completing for the organization, and then with those specific goals, we have insights and research, and we look at that before we actually try to make a decision around a program or a community or whatever it is. Because and I think that's one thing that we try to tell people in our organization. I'm not speaking from the Black community because I'm Black. I'm speaking because I know what the research tells me. I know what the data tells me. I know what the insights are. And so how do you remove who you are as a person and think about like who I am can only support, confirm, give me that small tweak, give me that small knowledge of that, the data to know like this is 100% true, but I'm combining the art and the science. So it's not a factor of I'm making a decision based on a hunch that I have. It's a mix of a combination of the art and the science.
I love that. And we only have a couple more minutes. So two things I want to go to. One is you talked about, being able to lead the way and hope you're able to help others even realize and understand how to go about things. So question for you is, what should brands consider if they want to start engaging the market in a authentic way?
I would say pulling the right people in the room. I know that Erica, she's built our team from the ground up. Literally, she was the first hire. And I think that she said it earlier. That's part, and I'm not going to speak for you, but it's really important to pull in those subject matter experts, to pull in those different experiences. We have so many individuals on our team that represent all the different communities that we serve. And it's a great way to bring our experience to the table as a sounding board paired with the right data. We pull in our research partners. We pull in Reggie's team. We're constantly collaborating with one another to find what's the best way to go to market. What's the best strategy to put into place here. I think it's definitely starts with that, because too often we have individuals that are not part of a community kind of making those decisions. And like Reggie was saying earlier, running off of assumptions, running off of what other brands have done. And it's not a one size fits all approach. You can look at the success of a brand, but really have to evaluate what's going to work for us. What's the tone? What's the message? Who are the right people? I think it's filling the room with the right individuals and then really pairing that data and going off of that and not just off of your own experience or assumption.
Jennifer said it best, team and culture. I mean, I really cannot echo how important it is and I probably take longer to hire because it is so important to me that team and culture are are manifesting in the strategy that I have, and making sure that we're aligned, that we have, skill sets that complement each other, making sure we have the right people in the right positions to be able to do this work. So team and culture are so important to me.
So last official question, and then you all can add a last piece if you'd like to. So I think this is just kind of a fun one. So you're doing a lot more with sports, especially soccer, right? Football. Huge Latino fan base, right? Huge Latino community there. How are you collaborating and kind of engaging in the sports realm to reach the Latino community? Just curious about how you're doing that there.
I can share something really quick because it's relevant right now. We have obviously a partnership with the Charlotte FC, and this is something that everyone knows soccer is life for Latinos. It's what we live and breathe, whether it's the World Cup or just supporting our local team, our home team, back in our countries. I think it's super important, a very strong piece of culture. And I think that when we partnered with Charlotte FC, we said, how can we specifically, again, reach the Hispanic consumer through this passion point? And we're doing something by building these community pitches around and underprivileged communities with kids that maybe they don't have the resources to get sent to these private soccer camps. And so we're showing up in partnership with our partner and building out these soccer pitches so they can come and play and practice. And we know that this is an important part of culture. And again, this is us resourcing the community. We're saying, yeah, our name is on the jersey, but we also want to show up in the neighborhoods and help you get better at a sport that you care so much about. And so I think it's finding those opportunities again to just show up in an impactful way, more than just a logo slap. Our CMO says it all the time. If it's a logo slap, we're not going to do it, because it has to go deeper than that. And so our Charlotte FC partnership is an amazing, beautiful thing. We're all over the jerseys, but then we're also in the communities, and we're also handing out resources there. I know Erica and Reggie can speak more to that too, but there's a lot of excitement happening in that space because we know it's important to Latinos.
And beyond that, I think it's important too to note that our CMO, we just came out with a big pledge, the 50-50 pledge, where we're committing to spend 50% of our sports spend against women's sports. So we're rethinking about how we spend a dollar from dollar to say, like, if long term, if we're spending $1 on men's sports, we also want to spend $1 on female sports too. We just made a huge announcement that we're shifting the National Women's Soccer League's championship game. We work with CBS to put that on prime time. The first time ever, the National Women's Soccer League game will be on prime time. And we actually used our negotiating power as an advertiser to work with CBS to shift it from a noon game to a primetime game. And those are just some of the things that we're doing across the board to make sure there's equity in diversity, but there's also equity in terms of male and female sports. So watch the game, change the game is the pledge that we made to the 50-50 spend.
I love that. I'm going to close it out. I know that we're a little bit over. I will say this, just thank you. Erica, Jennifer, Reggie, very much. Right. Team and culture, do it right and build trust is a common theme throughout this conversation. Could not have asked for anything more through this discussion. Truly appreciate it. Y'all gave some education to folks, part of a network. Are you okay with people reaching out to you on LinkedIn to connect with you there? Fantastic. Thank you so much. To the Alpha Family that's watching, thank you for watching, for tuning in. And we will see you next time on the next Alpha Live.
Thank you.